All right, we are down to the top three, and for those of you who have been listening to me for many years, I'm sure you already know what my top three WrestleManias are. You just might not know which order I'm going to put them in, and I'm going to rank WrestleMania 10 as my third favorite WrestleMania of all time, and you have no idea how badly part of me wanted to make this WrestleMania number one, but I couldn't in good conscience do it. A couple of other WrestleManias just edged this one out, but man, this one was very, very important to a young Bret Hart fangirl, GoodMicWork. I had recently graduated high school. I was about as big of a Bret Hart fan as you could be around this time. So naturally, this was going to be a very big night for me. And this pay-per-view really is best known for two superb wrestling matches. And if I were to do a top 10 WrestleMania matches video, maybe that's something I can do in the future. Maybe that's something I can do next year. But if I were to do one of those videos, two of my top 10 favorite WrestleMania matches of all time both took place on this show at WrestleMania 10 in Madison Square Garden. The first one, of course, opened up the show. You guys know how much I love this match. I've talked about it over and over and over again throughout the years, and this match ranks as my favorite WrestleMania match of all time. I mean, it's close. I mean, it's up there with Savage and Steamboat. It's up there with Shawn and Taker. But I still just have a profound love for Bret Hart and Owen Hart opening up the 10th anniversary of WrestleMania in Madison Square Garden in one of the most beautiful wrestling matches I've ever fucking seen. It don't get no bigger, as Jesse the Body Ventura would say. And the build to this was really interesting because Owen, prior to this, had really been a jabroni. I hate to say it. He was just kind of an underneath guy, a mid-card talent. He would win some matches, he would lose some matches, but he wasn't really in line for any title shots, not even the Intercontinental. So by the time we got to Survivor Series in 1993, and WWE did the angle where you had the tension between the brothers, and they had that issue at the end of the Survivor Series match, they got back together and teamed up at the Royal Rumble, fell short against the Quebecers, and that's when Owen turned on Bret and kicked his leg out of his leg. And one of the most famous wrestling quotes of all time, Owen, you are an absolute trip. But the match at WrestleMania 10, I remember at the time, I didn't see Owen Hart's victory coming. But I didn't care. I was actually happy. I was a little bit nervous because I was so concerned with Bret winning the title that night. When he took the loss to Owen, I was worried, especially with the hurt knee, that that was going to be their way of having him lose later on. So I will admit that I was a little bit nervous, but I really liked seeing Owen Hart win. Even at that age, even loving Bret Hart the way I did, I didn't really mind that he put his brother over because, number one, it was a beautiful match. Absolutely fucking superb match. And it didn't need to have anything crazy in it. There was no blood. There was no crazy high spots. There was nothing insane going on. No run-ins, no swerves, no heel turns, no nothing like that. And for me, it just gives me such a sense of pride that those are like my guys. You know, I was a Hart family guy. I was a Stampede guy. And I was a really heavy tape trader around this time. So I would trade for all of the old Stampede footage, and I had so many tapes of Bret and Owen from when they were young. So to see them in this setting like this, man, I couldn't have been happier. And to see Owen go over like that was a really smart move by WWE because in 1994, the wheels were starting to come off. You know, Vince was going to trial for the big steroid scandal. Hulk Hogan would leave and go to WCW. He would sign with WCW just a couple of months after this in the summer. And Bret Hart was really a champion in the worst time period of WWE. 1994 arguably is the worst year ever in WWE history. I mean, business was really down and they needed some challengers. They needed some new top contenders in the company. And making Owen one of those people I thought was great. Him and Bret were able to feud now past WrestleMania 10 all the way into SummerSlam where they would have that great steel cage match and their feud would even extend beyond that. Owen would be instrumental in Bret dropping the belt at the Survivor Series to Bob Backlund. So this was a long-running feud, and it took them several years to finally get back together, about 3, I believe, in 1997, when Bret, Owen, and the Bulldog all came back together for that embrace. But the rivalry between the two brothers, this was the pinnacle of it. This was the crowning moment of this feud, to watch Owen Hart go out there and have a wrestling match and beat Bret Hart clean. Arguably the greatest wrestler in the world at that time, at least in the ring. And Owen Hart beat him. And Owen was kind of an underneath guy. So that right there was an immediate launching for Owen. and he was one of the top heels in the business because of this victory over Bret Hart. It was incredible. And then if you fast forward all the way to the main event, Bret Hart coming full circle, going into the ring to face Yokozuna after he had defeated Lex Luger, which we all know was all set up at the Royal Rumble when Bret Hart and Lex Luger tied in the Rumble. They did a coin flip for WrestleMania 10. Lex Luger got the first title shot against Yokozuna while Bret faced Owen, and then Bret would go on to face the winner of Luger and Yoko in the main event. Yoko, of course, beat Lex Luger when Mr. Perfect, special guest referee, makes his return to the company and screws over Lex Luger. They had wrestled the previous WrestleMania at WrestleMania 9 when Luger was a heel. Now they're both baby faces, and Mr. Perfect never forgot, and he turned on Lex Luger, and they were supposed to go on and have a feud throughout the summer, but Mr. Perfect would leave. Something didn't work out. I can't remember the story there, but Perfect was gone, and the Luger-Perfect feud never happened in 1994. So that left Yokozuna in the main event to take on a one-legged Bret Hart, who had been pretty severely injured in the match with Owen Hart. And we had celebrities out the ass for this. Donnie Wahlberg was there. Burt Reynolds, the late Burt Reynolds, who just passed away this past year, did the ring introductions for this. And of course, the special guest referee was Roddy Piper, the man that Bret Hart faced at WrestleMania 8, which is on the number 10 spot in my countdown. And now Piper is back to ref the main event match of WrestleMania 10, and Piper is really the only guy from that first WrestleMania that was in the house for this night. He was in the main event at WrestleMania 1, of course, with Hogan and Mr. T and Paul Orndorff. So for him to be reffing the main event here, I thought was very fitting. And of course, Bret Hart would beat Yokozuna. Kind of a hokey finish. Not my favorite finish ever, but I didn't care. Bret Hart won the title. That's all I cared about. But when you go back and watch it, it's a little silly the way Yokozuna is up on the second rope going for the bonsai drop. He loses his balance and falls backwards. Bret covers him. It looked like both of Yoko's shoulders were off the mat. But Roddy Piper counts the 1, 2, 3 anyway. The crowd explodes, and Bret Hart wins the WWE title. Yokozuna and Mr. Fuji and Jim Cornette, who had taken a punch from Roddy Piper earlier on in the match, they all chased Piper out of the ring, leaving Bret Hart in there all by himself. And then in one of my favorite WrestleMania moments ever, and something that we haven't really seen done very often, all of the babyfaces emptied out of the locker room to come out and congratulate Bret Hart. Luger was the first one to hit the ring, and I thought they might go with a Bret and Luger main event here. That's what I thought they would do. Maybe a rematch or a kind of a rehash of Hogan and Warrior, just on a smaller scale. But I guess WWE wanted to keep it a straight heel versus babyface main event and not have to beat Luger or anything like that. So Luger showed up in the ring after Bret won the title. The two shake hands. They share an embrace. And then out comes Razor Ramon and Randy Savage, who gives Bret Hart a huge hug. You had Bob Holly and 1, 2, 3 Kid and Tatanka. You had Gorilla Monsoon coming in the ring. You even had Vince McMahon getting in the ring, along with Burt Reynolds and all the other celebrities that were around for WrestleMania. And then in one of the most beautiful finishes and endings and closings of a pay-per-view ever, you see Owen Hart in the aisleway staring at Bret, seething with jealousy, looking at him like, oh my God, you gotta be kidding me. I beat you fair and square in the opening match, and now you are world champion? That's horseshit. A part of me thought that Owen would get in the ring and actually congratulate and celebrate with his brother, but we knew that wasn't going to happen because they would go on to have a long feud for that belt all throughout the summer of 1994. But, you know, for a Bret Hart fan, this was a very, very, very special pay-per-view for me, and I was so happy that he regained the WWE title, because I cannot tell you how frustrated I was throughout the year in 1993 after he had lost the belt at WrestleMania 9 and he had to be stuck feuding with Jerry Lawler for all that time. He was being put in meaningless feuds and pointless shit, and finally he finds his way back to the WWE title, especially when it looked like WWE was pushing Lex Luger as this born-again Hogan, giving him the match at SummerSlam after he body slammed Yokozuna on the USS Intrepid, and they were building him to win the title at WrestleMania 10, but the fans weren't reacting to Luger the way WWE wanted them to, so they realized that Bret Hart was the fan favorite. It would be nice if WWE could take a a page from their own book from 1994, because nowadays, when you see guys like John Cena being pushed or Roman Reigns being pushed in the same way that Lex Luger did, and the fans reject him, the WWE goes right along with the push anyway. Back in the day, Lex Luger suffered from the fans not accepting him, and WWE went back to Bret Hart. So as a fan of Bret's, I could not be happier about that. Now, like I said, this pay-per-view is best known for two matches, one of which, of course, was Owen and Bret, and the other one was the insane ladder match between Razor Ramon and Shawn Michaels. This was really the first ladder match in WWE. They had had a couple. Shawn and Bret had a couple of practice walk-through ladder matches here or there, but this was the first ladder match on a big stage, and it was for the IC title. Shawn, back in 1993, was suspended. They stripped him of the title. Razor Ramon won the title during Shawn's absence, and when Shawn came back, he still had his belt. So now you had two guys walking around claiming to be Intercontinental Champions, so what they did, they hung both belts up above the ring and had a ladder match to determine the undisputed Intercontinental Champion. The match went about 20 minutes, famously went a little bit long. Apparently Randy Savage got all bent out of shape, both of these guys behind the scenes, because they did have to bump the 10-man tag because of the overrun of this match, but still, it's a sacrifice as a fan that I can live with, because damn was this match good, and it still holds up today. This match is 25 years old. You realize that from this ladder match, and it is still just as good as it ever was. And it holds up to any ladder match. Now, they didn't get too crazy. They definitely used this ladder as a weapon and took some insane punishment, which for the time was extremely innovative. But if you would look and see what ladder matches would become in the Attitude Era, with all the crazy tag team matches with the Hardys and the Dudleys and Edge and Christian, and some of the things Jeff Hardy was doing, and some of the other crazy ladder matches that you would see with Chris Benoit and Jericho and guys like that, you know, wrestlers would become very creative and very innovative in these ladder matches, and they would only get better with each passing year. But when you look back to this very first one, it's absolutely awesome. And I still think that a young fan, you know, who might be 15 years old watching wrestling as a modern fan in 2019, should be able to go back and look at this match and be amazed by it, because it was so good. And they took an absolute beating with that ladder. Some of the shots they were giving each other, you know, just full on throwing this ladder, you know, and taking these shots right in the lower back and in the neck and on the head, all over the place. The crowd was just oohing and awing through the whole thing. Vince McMahon, you know, some people give Vince shit on commentary because he was so crazy and so over the top, but I thought he did a really good job of telling the story in this match. I mean, he was giving these guys their due, marking out for everything. Even Jerry Lawler couldn't believe some of the shit that he was seeing. I did like the finish, too, you know, with Shawn getting stuck in the ropes while Razor Ramon climbed up and just kind of pulled down both titles and falls right to his back. The crowd explodes. Might have been the pop of the night. I mean, Bret Hart got a huge ovation when he won the title, but when Razor fell off the ladder with both of those belts, the crowd went nuts. And it was an amazing match, and go back and watch it. If you haven't seen it in a while, it never gets old. It literally never gets old. And there's that classic flashbulb moment there where Shawn is giving Razor the splash off the ladder, and when you slow it down in slow motion with the cameras going off in the background, it's one of the most beautiful WrestleMania images that we've ever seen. Great shit, and I absolutely love that match.